Hello everyone, the Nikana Prime is, in my opinion, in the literal sense of the word, the best melee weapon in the game. Now, you might be asking, or you might be skeptical, saying that the Glaive Prime or Zorus is much better, for example. Well, I would beg to differ. Basically, the Glaive, Zorus are of course glaive weapons, which you basically throw and explode, so basically they're sort of exploding shurikens in a sense, and that's why I do consider them melee weapons. They're are in that category, but in the literal sense of melee, you need to be right in front of someone's face to actually slash them, punch them, whatever you want to call it. The Nikana Prime is the best weapon. Now, first of all, it is a Nikana weapon, basically a katana if you're not really into it. Now, there's three variants: the Dragon Nikana, the Base Nikana, and Nikana Prime. The Dragon Nikana is really good, but the Nikana Prime outshines it in basically every literal sense. We do have the Ski and Jari and Siam as well, and basically, stats-wise, the Nikana Prime has the highest critical chance and multiplier of all of the Nikanas. It has the second fastest attack speed behind, of course, the Ski and Jari. It has the third highest behind the Siam and Ski and Jari as well. So, it might not look the best, but believe me, this weapon with the Blind Justice stance and all the mods that you will see later down the line can basically destroy anything. Now, I never made a specific video on this weapon because I haven't used it for a long time because basically it's actually too good in my opinion, but that's why I'm making it now, because there's a lot of melee weapons adding into the game, especially in Kronen ones, and I think this is the best time to shine a light on one of the, I guess, older weapons in the game, because the weapon did came out with Seren Prime, which was a decent time ago, and it still shines bright to this day. First of all, stats-wise, first, it has 90% slash, so basically all of its damage is slash, and we all know how much we love slash. It has 28% status, which is pretty good. Crit chance is basically the same, 28%, and crit multiplier of 2.4. It has an attack speed of 1.08, which is pretty decent, nothing to scoff at, honestly. I mean, it is behind the Skenjari, but not too far off, and honestly, I do have to say, with the Blind Justice stance, I love this weapon. The attacks are incredibly fluid, they're incredibly good. When you hold down your mouse button, you're gonna see it on the screen right now, you do sort of a dash, closing the distance, allowing you to basically do even more damage. And especially when it comes to heavy attacks, this weapon is really good. Now, heavy damage is 990, and of course it has a radius of 7.0 meters for the slam attack, and wind up is 0.5 seconds, which is not that long for a heavy attack. I wouldn't purposely make this weapon for a heavy attack build, but when you reach 12x combo, when you get up to there, if an Acolyte or a Thrax unit or anything appears, you're basically going to one-shot it without any issue. Now, keeping that in mind, you're not making this weapon for heavy attacks, you're making this weapon just to fight with it, with normal attacks, and imagine if you actually did focus at least a little bit on it, you would basically just easily kill almost everything. Now, nonetheless, I have no issues with any sort of level of enemies with this weapon. Now, of course, Conditional Overload is a must alongside a Primer, Kuvenu Core, or Epitaph. The builds are on the screen for both right there. I know some people are gonna say my Epitaph build is pretty shit. I use it, I love it. Statuses, that's what it's important. The more statuses, the more damage, bigger numbers. Gaming Weasel's happy, you guys are happy. Basically, that's it. Just so I can justify it before someone in the comments basically kills me with it. Nonetheless, Prime Pressure Point would be much better if you're playing the circuit, so keep that in mind, because of course in the circuit your chances of getting, first of all, the Nikana Prime are pretty low, and of course getting a Kuvenu Core or any sort of Prime like the Cedo or Epitaph are pretty low as well, so Prime Pressure Point would definitely be your option. But whilst we are talking about modding, let's move on to the actual modding section of this weapon. And now for the most important part, the actual build of the weapon, or should I say builds. Now, of course, we have Blind Justice, as we talked about, my favorite stance. You can use Decisive Judgment or Tranquil Cleave, but in my opinion, Blind Justice is definitely the best one. we do have our typical mods: Condition Overload, Blood Rush, and Weeping Wounds for increased, of course, damage, critical chance, and of course status as well. The status at 28% is pretty decent, but we do want more, so Weeping Wounds is a must in my opinion. Viral, of course, with Northwind and Prime Fever Strike. Prime Fury for attack speed, we have Organ Shatter, and we have Gladiator Might for critical damage. Now, keep this in mind. In the gameplay, I use Gladiator Might because of one thing. If you do have a Smite or a Primed Smite mod, definitely put it on. Now, because I usually fight against Corrupted and I don't have a Corrupted one, then I usually just use Gladiator Might. But if you do, if you're fighting, for example, with Grunier or Corpus or Infested, I guess, you could put it on there. You know, just put it on there because, of course, more damage is always very, very good. Now, with this weapon, of course, you do need a primer. Now, with my primer, the Kuva Nukor, I get 5 different status effects, and that means 400% extra damage for Condition Overload. The build of the Kuva Nukor is like this, so as I said, Blast, Radiation, Magnetic, Corrosive, and also the Microwave status effect, which you cannot see here, but the Kuva Nukor does have it. And, of course, we do have Secondary Encumbered, which gives us a 24% chance to trigger a second random status effect, which is very, very good, which is very, very nice, and more damage. Now, the second build is going to be basically for the circuit and just places where you really cannot get yourself the Kuva Nukor, or for example that you don't want to use a primer on your weapon. Blind Justice stays the same, but we use Primed Pressure Point, we use Sacrificial Steel, and basically everything else stays the same. We have more viral this time. Instead of the Vicious Frost mod, of course, as I said, a Smite mod would be very good. So, for example, Smite Grunier, put it on there. There you go. You have decent viral / of course, incredible, Organ Shatter, and Gladiator Might. Now, if you don't want Gladiator Might, another good option is Primed Reach, so you can put it there to increase the range up to 5 meters basically, which is very, very good. Because with this setup, you're gonna have really good base damage, and if you do get really good decrease inside of the circuit, this weapon is going to shred through everything. As I said, if you're lucky enough to get yourself the Kuva Nukor or Epitaph or even the Cedo for your circuit 1, then you're pretty much set. But now on to the final thoughts about, of course, the Nikana Prime. In general, the Nikana Prime is, in my opinion, and as I have said in the beginning of the video, the best melee weapon in the game. It honestly cannot be topped either in damage-wise or just honestly in damage output-wise. I mean, if we do count the glaive, then yes, you know, throwing it, exploding, doing massive slash damage, and then doing that again and again is much better, but in the conventional sense of the word, the Nikana Prime is the best melee weapon in the game, and also it kinda makes you feel like you're from Demon Slayer, so that's sort of like an added benefit. Nonetheless, if you do not have this weapon, I highly do urge you to get this weapon and use it, try it out, see it for yourself and what you think about it. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, do leave a like, a comment, and do subscribe for more content, and I will see you guys on the next one. The Gaming Weasel over and out.